Yesterday we discussed this two opposite contemplations. One is Adinava-nupassana, that is contemplation of misery or repulsive, unpleasantness. And the opposite of that is Asada-nupassana, contemplation of pleasure or pleasantness, or contemplation as objects of pleasure or pleasant objects. Today we shall continue with this topic. Not seeing the true nature of objects, nama-rupa, not seeing the truth, not seeing the realities. One thinks they are good, satisfactory, hence one thinks they are pleasurable, such as when one sees some visible object, the sight is pleasurable, desirable, agreeable, good. The sound is good, the smell is good, and so on. And even the thoughts sometimes are very attractive, and one fantasizes, one gets drifted in these thoughts, and one enjoys good thoughts. Thinking that they are good, pleasurable, one becomes attached to them and will not wish to let it go. And then instead of seeing them as miserable, unpleasant, repulsive, Adinava-nupassana, contemplation of misery, one is thinking in an opposite way, namely contemplation as pleasure. Not seeing the flaws, one thinks that they are pleasurable. Not seeing the truth, just simply not seeing the truth is abhidipati avijja, is ordinary ignorance, unknowing. Not seeing things as they are. This is known as abhidipati avijja. Then seeing in a wrong way, misperception or misunderstanding, is miccha patipati avijja, thinking in a wrong way. So one becomes ignorant, avijja. One will think that things are pleasurable because one does not know the truth or does not see the truth. One thinks that they are pleasurable, they are satisfactory. Then one will crave for these objects which one thinks that they are pleasurable, such as sight, sounds, and so on. And so also with the existence, one will crave for existence. That the certain existence is good, enjoyable. So one will crave for existence. If the avijja is weak, then there will be this weak form of craving. If avijja is very strong, then there will be very strong form of craving leading to grasping or clinging. And there are two kinds of clinging, as we have discussed. Sensuous clinging, clinging of sense, clinging in terms of, or clinging as sensuality, clinging of senses. That is sensuous clinging. And then there is another clinging known as view clinging, clinging with respect to views. That I am seeing, I am enjoying, I am hearing, and the one who is hearing and seeing is I. In this way one identifies as I, you, man, person, being, and so on. This is clinging in terms of views, view clinging. So in this way we have two kinds of clinging, view clinging and sensuous clinging. So this is kilesa vada, the round of defilements. As is said in the Vipassana maxim, not being mindful, kilesas enter. Being mindful, one overcomes kilesas. So because one is not mindful, one does not see the truth. Not only not seeing the truth, but one sees in the wrong way. Then there will be craving for pleasurable objects, leading to clinging. Clinging of senses and clinging with views. And if you are not mindful, kilesas are bound to attack you, invade you, and there will be many kilesas. When you are mindful, you will be rid of kilesas. They will not enter your stream of consciousness. Knowing the truth of this mind-body, which are subject to cause and condition, arising and passing away. This is seeing anicca lakkhana, the characteristic of impermanence. This is one kind of adinava, contemplation of misery, contemplation of unpleasantness, seeing the flaws. Then whatever is impermanent cannot be satisfactory. They are unacceptable. They will be seen as unacceptable, repulsive, dangerous. Especially when you experience unbearable sensations in your body, you will come to conclude that the whole body is a mass of suffering, a heap of dukkha. This is seeing dukkha lakkhana, the characteristic of unsatisfactoriness. This is another contemplation of misery, unpleasantness, adinava vipassana. Seeing the impermanent nature, this is anicca adinava vipassana. Seeing the unsatisfactory nature, or seeing the arising and passing away, anicca is anicca adinava vipassana. Seeing the unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, this is contemplation of dukkha adinava vipassana, contemplation of misery in terms of unsatisfactoriness. So these are the things that they arise at their will, not at your will. You don't want them to arise, but they arise. But you want some of things to arise, especially good things to arise at your will, but they don't arise. They don't do so. They arise as a result of cause and condition, because they are conditioned phenomena. They arise at their will, on their own. So this is another contemplation of adinava, contemplation of repulsive, misery, unpleasantness, because things are arising on their own. This is another contemplation of adinava, anatta adinava vipassana. So seeing the truth, the realities of conditioned psychophysical phenomena in terms of the universal characteristics, seeing the adinava, contemplating the adinava vipassana, contemplating the misery or unpleasantness of these things. So when one sees the truth, one will not see in the wrong way. Such as previously one might have seen them as permanent. There may be this perception of permanence in you previously, but now seeing the impermanent nature, this kind of view or perception is gone. You will not perceive them as permanent. Previously you might think that they are satisfactory, acceptable, but now seeing them as unsatisfactory, they are unacceptable. So this perception of satisfactoriness will be gone from you. And seeing the whole body as dukkha, not pleasurable, unpleasant nature, so this perception of pleasantness or satisfactoriness will be gone from you. So seeing them as rising on their own, at their will, ungovernable, uncontrollable nature, then this perception of self or soul or personality will be gone from you. Now, seeing them, all these perceptions, you'll be free of these perceptions, such as nature sanya, perception of permanence, sukha sanya, perception of pleasure or satisfactoriness, and atta sanya, perception of self or soul or personality. So seeing the truth, not seeing in the wrong way, this is vijja in Pali, or jnana, they call in different ways, or panya, or vimansa, or samadhi, or dhamma vijaya, sambojana. Many terms. In a sense, they are vijja, knowledge, knowing the truth. So if that's why it is said that if you are mindful, you'll be free of kilesas. So in place of avijja, vijja comes, because they are two opposite terms. So vijja substitutes avijja. If you don't know, if you're ignorant, you will crave. Now you know the truth, there will be no craving, no clinging. Automatically you become free of these unskillful mental states. So once you are able to contemplate Vipassana, contemplation of misery or unpleasant nature, seeing the characteristics of mind-body, then the whole range of kilesas, you become free of the whole range of kilesas. They are said to be overcome and they cease to exist. The impermanent nature of objects, the perception of permanence will be gone from you. If you think that things are permanent, you will be proud and conceited, mana. You will be overcome by mana, such as, I am healthy and strong, I will never die, that sort of thing. I am the same person, yesterday, today, tomorrow, I will always be the same, that sort of thing. That's mana, pride, conceit. Because one perceives things as permanent. Now, seeing the arising and passing away, the old giving place to a new, that things are in a state of flux, you overcome this kind of perception of mana, pride, perception of permanence. So overcome this mana, pride, conceit. Now, when you think that things are satisfactory, you crave for these objects. You think they are good, they're pleasurable, so you'll be overcome by tanha, craving, leading to grasping. Now you see them as unsatisfactory. Because what is impermanent cannot be satisfactory, cannot be acceptable. It's despicable, not pleasurable. So there's no reason to crave for them. Seeing the truth, contemplating the dukkha Vipassana, contemplation of misery in terms of unsatisfactoriness, you will be free from the perception of satisfactoriness or pleasure. Only when you think that they are pleasurable, you will crave. Now you see the unsatisfactory nature, so tanha will not have a chance to arise in your stream of consciousness. In this way, you become free from this craving tanha. Seeing that all these sensualities, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, sense impressions are unacceptable, they're dangerous, they're repulsive. Before you saw the truth, you did not see the flaws or defects of these objects. You think they're pleasurable, they're good, such as seeing is good, hearing is good. All these sense impressions are pleasurable. Now, seeing the truth, seeing the unsatisfactory nature, tanha, craving will never have a chance to arise in your stream of consciousness. In this way, they cease to exist. They come to extinction. There will be no tanha, no clinging. No craving, no clinging. And then things are arising on their own, seeing them in this way, that things are ungovernable, uncontrollable, especially at the higher insight knowledge, being free from these form concepts, and then the concepts of naming concepts, form concepts, seeing both the noted object and the noting mind passing away, dissolving in pairs, then you will come to think that they are unacceptable and they are dangerous. Seeing that these phenomena, they are just phenomena rolling on, you become free from this atta deity, the view of self or soul or personality. So only when you have this perception of atta, self or soul, I identifying as I, you, person, being, man, and so on, there will be this atta deity, the view of self. Now, seeing that they are selfless nature of these objects, seeing in a true way that they are just phenomena rolling on, you'll be free from this atta deity, view of self or soul or personality. In this way, seeing the impermanent nature, you are free of this perception of permanence. You are free from this mana. You are said to have overcome mana, pride or conceit. Seeing the unsatisfactory nature of objects, that things are unsatisfactory, you'll be free from tanha, craving. And seeing that things are arising on their own, at their will, ungovernable, uncontrollable, selfless, soulless, you'll be free from this atta sanya, perception of self or soul. In this way you are rid of this deity, free from deity, view. In this case, view means wrong view. So in this way, these tanha, mana, deity, which are the things which expand and which multiply, which tend to multiply and diffuse, are not given a chance to arise in a stream of consciousness. So they cannot expand, because they are expansionists, like the imperialists. They tend to expand, multiply. That's why I call them as expansionists, or multiplications, artifusions. So in this way, one sees them, one is free from this, but the practice is to be free from these three unskillful mental states, namely tanha, mana, deity. Noting, rising and falling, at the moment of this knowledge of the universal characteristics, one is free from this mana, tanha, deity. Let us discuss this thing from the practical aspect. When we watch the abdomen and note rising and falling and observing these sensations, stiffness, tension, movement, inflation, these are the manifestations of the element of the wind, vaya, potaba, rupa, the material, tangible element of the wind. That one observes them as rising and passing away. First of all, one may see only the beginning and the end of rising or falling. But later, in the course of the practice, one will see the segments of these rising and falling in microscopic details. That this materiality, which is stiffness, tension, movement, are nature, the impermanent things. We call them anicca, just anicca. But they rise and pass away, one sees the beginning and the end of them. This is seeing anicca lakkhana, the characteristic of impermanence. In the course of the practice, one sees the beginning of the rising and the end of the rising. As one reaches the maturity of the practice, one gets experience of the practice, then one will see them in segments of this materiality, the old giving place to the new, seeing them as being convinced of the impermanent nature of these objects. This is anicca adinava vipassana, or just anicca vipassana, contemplation of impermanence, or knowledge of the contemplation of the misery or unpleasantness in terms of impermanence, anicca adinava vipassana. So, in this way, not only this impermanence, perception of impermanence, one will become free of this perception of impermanence, not only in respect of the objects noted, but also in respect of the objects not noted. That means other mind, body objects. Automatically, one will become convinced of the impermanent nature, though one is not noting other objects. Once you see the noted object rising and passing away, coming and going, appearing and disappearing, all giving place to a new, you become convinced that not only in the present things must have happened in the same way in the past, and also they will happen in the future. In respect of objects noted as well as objects not noted. So in this way one sees the defects or flaws of these objects, that they are impermanent. In this way one becomes free from mana, pride or conceit. If one is not mindful at the moment of arising, then one will hold the view of self or soul or I who is seeing, hearing or experiencing. In this way one tends to become conceited or become proud of oneself. Now seeing the rising and passing away, the old giving place to new, the mana will not have a chance to arise in the stream of consciousness. By not being given a chance, you are said to become free of this mana. So, seeing the impermanent nature, you will see the unsatisfactory nature as well. Because what is impermanent cannot be satisfactory, not worthy of acceptance. So, you will see this, you will become convinced of this nature in the course of the practice, seeing the unsatisfactory nature. This is seeing one defect. So only when you see, when you consider things as pleasurable or satisfactory, there will arise tanha, you crave for these objects. Now you see them as unsatisfactory, therefore there will be no tanha, no craving, because you see the truth. So, and also, this happens at the moment of rising, and the same thing will happen at the moment of falling. So, now where do these rising and falling come from? They come from the in and out breath. Now, if there's no breathing, there will be no rising and falling. So, they are related. And there's no atta, self or soul in and out breath. So who is giving command? Who is making this to breathe? Who is giving the command? Is there any commander, any force, any power which is commanding this? Now, if you don't breathe, for a breathing animal, if that animal does not breathe, then it will become, or one will become, or feel discomfortable due to lack of breathing. Because one is used to breathing, one must breathe to live. So if one holds one's breath, then one will feel very uncomfortable. Therefore, to be released from this discomfort, you breathe in and out, resulting in rising and falling of the abdomen. So they are related. So where is the self and soul in all these things? They're just phenomena rolling on. They're just cause-effect process. The old giving place to the new, they are unacceptable. So there's no atta, self or soul, in rising and falling, nor there is any commander to rise and fall. It's just the nature of the wind element, rising and falling, inflating and deflating. So there is no self and soul, no living entity. The view of self or soul or personality. Now you see just the nature, the phenomena rolling on. You'll be free from atta or deity. There will be no view of self in this case. In this way, you become free from this mana, dana, deity at the moment of this mindfulness. They are free by not being given a chance to arise in your stream of consciousness. That's why we say we overcome this. Especially, it becomes obvious when one sees the truth, one will be free from tanha. There will be no craving. Prior to the practice, there may be craving of pleasurable objects, pleasures of senses, because the mind was not controlled. There was no practice of the restraint of mind, giving the mind free will. Unrestrained, one is led to craving and grasping, tanha upadana. There was no practice of the mindfulness, as the mind is not guarded all the time. So leaving the mind free will, to have its own free will. Also in the beginning of the practice as well, while the mindfulness is not so strong, in most cases one's attention is directed towards sense objects, pleasurable objects, as one has been addicted to. But in the course of the practice, with the application of exertion of energy and precise focusing, then one activates mindfulness, leading to unification of the mind. Gradually, with the application of these mental forces, the mind becomes unified, deepened, concentration is deepened, and that is because of the control of the mind, practice of the restraint of the mind, not leaving the mind to have its own free will. Now with deepened concentration, one is bound to cultivate insight, seeing the nature of these objects noted, such as the discernment of mind and body, and the causal mode, and the universal characteristics. That is being awakened to the light. Lakhana pativeda jnana. Lakhana pativeda jnana. Knowledge of the penetration of the characteristics. That is seeing the light, or being awakened to light. Prior to the practice, when one encounters agreeable objects, one will be pulled away towards these objects. Now, at the beginning of the practice also, you encounter such objects. But what is the difference between the state of the mind? Previously, you left your mind uncontrolled, have its own free will. Then your mind is led or pulled away towards pleasurable objects, craving and grasping, because one had not seen the flaws of these objects. Now, in the course of the practice, especially the practice ripens, matures to cultivate insight knowledge. Previously, although you sought the same thing, heard the same thing, now, although you see the same thing, there will be no attachment, because you see the true nature of these objects noted, such as the seeing arises and passes away, the hearing arises and passes away, or the object seen or heard arises and passes away. In this way, seeing the impermanent nature and the unsatisfactory nature, that they are not worthy of acceptance, they are despicable, unsatisfactory, and also they are selfless, impersonal, they arise at their will, not at your will, they are not governable, not controllable. Before you saw the truth, you crave, because you left your mind uncontrolled, unrestrained towards these sense objects. Now seeing the defects, seeing the truth, although you see, hear, taste, touch the same things, you are free from this extreme. With the mindfulness, you are free from the extreme of self-indulgence or sense indulgence. Kama sukhalika nuyoga. Indulging the leaving the mind uncontrolled and indulging in sense objects. That is what is meant by this kama sukhalika nuyoga. Because now you are mindful and fully aware of the objects noted, seeing the characteristics, the truth of these objects, cultivating insight, seeing the miserable nature of these objects, adinava nupassana jnana, contemplation of unpleasantness. You see them as unsatisfactory, unacceptable. And also, in the course of the practice, while you are practicing, you are not starving. Although you are fasting in the afternoon, you are not starving totally. You are not free from clothes. You are wearing clothes which should be worn, not naked. And then you balance the weather conditions, adjust yourself to suit the weather conditions of heat and cold. And also you balance these four postures, not sitting all the time or standing all the time, but you balance yourself among these four postures. And then you use things which should be used, not just, practicing this self-mortification. Atta kila mata nuyoga. Atta kila mata nuyoga. Self-mortification. Trying to deny everything. Practicing this extreme of self-denial. But you're not doing that. You are using what should be used. To suit your body, to suit your mind. So now you are using what should be used. There's no self-mortification. You are free from one extreme of this Atta Kilamata Nuyoga, the practice of self-mortification or extreme asceticism. So in this way, because you are free from these two extremes, you are striking the middle path, Majjhima Patipada. When do you strike this middle path? At the moment of this cultivating of knowledge, at the moment of the practice of the noble path of 8 constituents. So with being fulfilled with insight, you are walking the middle path. Middle path leading towards the peace of Nibbana, the direct path of Majjhima Patipada. This is, people heard about, or people hear about this expression, Majjhima Patipada, the middle way, maybe only from the theoretical standpoint. Now this is the practical explanation of this middle path. Because you are not leaving the mind uncontrolled, you are mindful, activate your mindfulness. You're controlling your mind, restraining your mind, so that even if you see pleasurable objects, encounter pleasurable objects, you are mindful and fully aware, so that no tanha has a chance to arise in your stream of consciousness. And then you're not also denying everything to cause weariness or tiredness in both your body and mind. No self-mortification, you're walking the middle path. This is in accordance with the Buddha's wishes. Using what should be used, not totally denying it, not to endure extreme suffering, physical and mental suffering. Taking food as you need it, and then wearing clothes as you need, and adjusting yourself to weather conditions, adjusting yourself, balancing the four postures. In this way you are walking this middle path, and so that you're mindful, so that no tanha also will arise. And this is the path of the middle way, Majjhima Patipada. One is not practicing the restraint of the mind with the practice of mindfulness, that is tantamount to leaving the mind uncontrolled in respect of the pleasures of senses. This gives rise to this one extreme of self-indulgence, kama sukhalika nuyoga, one extreme of self-indulgence or interest indulgence. Not avoiding this and not being free from this one extreme. This is one side, one aspect. Then there's another aspect. In order to cause pain, physical pain, mental suffering, denying everything, starving and so on, not wearing clothes and things like that. This is causing suffering, physical suffering. This is another extreme. And this extreme also is to be avoided. This is another aspect. The Buddha has condemned the first aspect, that indulgence, in 5 ways. That this is the way of the villagers, Gamma. Hina. And we start with Hina. Low, vulgar. It is low and vulgar. And the way of the villagers, Kama, like the worms, insects and animals also, they also enjoy such things. So they are low, vulgar, the way of the villagers. And Putujanika. Putujanika. And Putujanika, the way of the untrained ordinary beings, as different from the trained noble ones. And Anariyo, not the way of the Ariyas, that is pure and noble ones. And Anatta Sahito, not the prosperity in terms of the practice of the 3 trainings, Sila Samadhi, Panya. To weaken the kilesas, defilements, the round of defilements which is the cause of suffering, or cut off totally if possible, one practices in order to realize actual peace and happiness. So long as we are not able to cut off this round of defilement made up of avijja, tanha, upadana, we are not bound to be peaceful and happy. So in order to achieve that purpose, we practice the 3 trainings of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, in order to overcome the gross forms of defilements with the practice of Sila, morality, and the practice of the concentration group to overcome the medium form, obsessive forms of defilements, and the practice of wisdom to overcome the latent tendencies of the refined forms of defilements. These are the prosperity, causes for prosperity. And this practice of self-indulgence does not conduce to the prosperity in this way. So in overcoming kilesas, the one practices the Sila Samadhi Panya. And this indulgence is not connected, is not associated with such a practice. So this is something to be avoided by being mindful and fully aware, guarding the mind all the time with a vigilant mindfulness of every arising, especially with the cultivation of concentration and knowledge. Even if one encounters pleasurable objects, there will be no tanha, because one is mindful and fully aware. So that one is not indulging in sense pleasures. One is said to be avoiding this one extreme. How nice! One extreme of self-indulgence or indulgence. And as for the other extreme, one is not practicing to cause physical, mental suffering, just like the starving oneself or not wearing anything. And this has been condemned by the Buddha in 3 ways. Dukkha is painful. Anarya, not the way of the Aryas, because the Aryas will not practice like this, and is Anatta Sayadaw. This is not the practice of the 3 trainings of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, which is the real prosperity. And then one is practicing not to go to extreme of self-modification, and if one does so, if one is starving oneself and denying everything, and practicing these extreme practices of heat and cold and so on, this is one extreme. This extreme is also to be avoided. Now the Buddha has permitted the faithful beings, disciples, to practice, to wear what should be worn, and to take food, what should be taken, and to live in a monastery, in a building, a suitable building, and take medicines as and when required, adjust oneself to heat and cold, and then balance these 4 postures so as not to suffer physically and mentally. This is one extreme, avoiding one extreme of self-modification. So in this way, these 2 extremes are avoided by being mindful whenever one encounters even pleasurable objects. One is mindful and fully aware. Because one is mindful, there will be no tanha. No tanha will not have a chance to arise in one stream of consciousness. And also one is using what should be used, wearing what should be worn, and so on, in a moderate way, and mindful and fully aware of every arising. In this way, if one practices just one of these 4 mindfulness, satipatthana, which is the practice of the noble path of 8 constituents, this is the practical practice of the middle path, Majjhima Patipada. One can compare or verify with one's own practice whether one is walking this middle path, the right path. If one walks this right path, one is bound to reach the right destination. At this stage, one sees the beginning and the end of the noted object, and not quite the middle of the object, only 2 parts. Because the objects are fleeting, arising and passing away very quickly, they seem to appear in the yogi's mind only the beginning and the end, not the middle. Not that the middle is not there. The middle is there, but the objects are very fast. That's why the middle is not obvious. Because of the fleeting way of these objects, in this insight knowledge, there's also one kind of insight knowledge, one kind of lakkhana pativeda samadhi, the right view by penetrating the characteristics. Lakkhana pativeda samadhi. So, in this way, the things arise and pass away very quickly. And in the beginning, the sammasana jnana, that is beginning of the insight knowledge of the reflection of impermanence, knowledge by reflecting the impermanent nature of the knowledge of the objects, sammasana jnana. In this insight stage, one sees the arising and passing away. One sees in 3 parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. They are all obvious. Now as one deepens one's practice, the concentration is deepened and then the knowledge is cultivated, then one sees the fading away of these objects. So at this stage, one will be free from these two kinds of views, the permanent view and impermanent view. That is, impermanent view is annihilation, and the other is the permanent view, that is the Sassada Ditti and Ucceda Ditti. That the Atta is permanent, and it is there, and somebody, a force or a being, supreme being, is giving command to this individual self or soul, so that this self, although the body may perish, this self or soul or living entity never perishes. It moves from one body to another, from the old body to the new one. So in this way, one thinks that things are permanent, that impermanent, thinking that there is such a thing as self or soul or living entity, which is moving from one body to another. This is Sassada Ditti. And then seeing this old giving place to the new, one sees that things are impermanent, they are disappearing, becoming that there is no such thing as Atta, is only mind-body, the psychophysical phenomena rolling on. If one sees the objects, the old dissolving before the new one comes, let us say the objects, the old one dissolving and disappearing, one will be free from this Sassada Ditti, that things are permanent. If one sees one only sees the objects rising, one will be holding this permanent nature of these objects, Sassada Ditti. Now, one sees the new ones coming, then before one thinks that the Atta, self or soul, is always there, permanent, they are not cut off. Now they think that the Atta is cut off, now the new one is coming up. That means they are not cut off totally. So that one is free from this annihilation view. That is Ucceda Ditti. So in this way, one will become free from these two extremes of views, Ucceda Ditti and Sassada Ditti. Ucceda Ditti, thinking that things are totally cut off and there will be no, after one dies, that's the end of it and nothing comes up. Annihilation view. The other one is not cut off. It is always there, permanent, and this Jiva Atta moving from one body to another. This is Sassada Ditti. Now if one is mindful at the moment of arising, seeing the new one coming up, the old one giving place to the new, rising and passing away, one will be free from these two kinds of views. View of permanence and view of annihilation, cutting off. We shall continue the subject of Ucceda Ditti, Sassada Ditti tomorrow. That's all for today. Tomorrow. That's all for today. Tomorrow. That's all for today. Tomorrow. That's all for